Hi guys, welcome. I'm just double checking to make sure everything's all set up right. Okay, so welcome. I'm Becky, and you've now wanting to make the 80s style bowler bag. Here it is. So sorry about the glare of this sun. Um, so we are making this regarding those of you who brought the Easter calendar. So if you're watching this after the Easter calendar, um, I personally do two advent calendars a year, and that's a Christmas advent calendar. That's 24 days of sewing, and then I also do, which has got free projects in. And then I do an Easter calendar, which has got 4 days worth of goodies. And now each parcel every day has quite a lot of amount of stuff in the Easter calendar. So, but they're the same value price. So both calendars are both the same price. So the Easter calendar, this is from the Easter calendar. So if you're watching from general public and you want to join in with the Easter calendar for next year or the Christmas advent calendar, please go over to the website. That's rjafmakes.com and subscribe to the newsletter. And we do put some on general sale after Fred's Gang, which is my online club. They basically get first dibs. So let's start off. So we're doing the 80s style bowler bag this time. So this year, 2025, I'm doing a few patterns which revolve around the 80s or 80s print, like the bright colours and stuff like that. This is an intermediate to an advanced make, but you can make it as beginner friendly as you want. If you're going to do it beginner friendly, what comes in the contents of the Easter calendar, please put to one side as fabric wise and just use cotton fabric until you've made one. And then basically, once you're happy with that one, then jump over to the fabric that's in your Easter calendar. So today we're going to make the whole bag, and then for those at the end are probably wondering, well, we haven't used these two pieces of hardware. This isn't in your pattern. I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy tassel. And you'll use one of the rivets, not rivets, Chicago screws that came in the little mini hearts. So that's a little added bonus, but it's definitely not in your actual pattern. Now the pattern you would have had in your calendar. Here it is. You can digitally download this once it goes on general sale, which is 3 months exclusive to the calendar to start off with. And then obviously, after the 3 months is up, you will physically get this on the website or on the TV channel that I take my patterns onto, which is Sewing Street. Okay, so there isn't many templates. So there is only one page of templates. The rest is cutting out measurements. Now, I do that on purpose, so it just means that you're using less paper in your instruction when you're printing out your instructions, or the booklets don't end up, the paper pattern booklets don't end up being too expensive. Trying to keep below the £10 mark at the moment. So yes, there is measurements. So follow those. I will explain this all over on the overhead camera. The thing about the pattern is when you've got your step-by-step instructions, you'll see that there is image numbers. You will have to reference to the image numbers on the actual pattern itself. Now, in the pattern, the templates, so you get the one template and the rest. Obviously, I've cut this out. When you are printing it out, you've got a 1 inch square. Please measure that just to make sure it's definitely 1 inch. These parts here are for this section here, this little bit here. Now we can have two finishes. We've got some anchors on this, which I'll be showing you in the video because they got them with the Easter calendar. But I will talk you through on how to do the D-ring part if you want to. You don't have to use webbing. I'm just using webbing because we used it in the Easter calendar, but you can make your own straps. Now, if you want to make your own strap, if you go to one of my previous videos, which is on how to make a crossbody strap, just follow those instructions. Do it 4 inches wide and as long as you want, and basically talk you through on how to make that strap. There's just a few more things. So this here, don't cut this part out until the instructions tell you to do so. Also, this here is place on fold, so you can do 2 pieces. But there is another bit where it says motif placement. The motif placement is a guideline. It's totally up to you, but it's to do this. Now, I'm not going to show you this in the video. In the Easter calendar, you've got some fabric to do this motif. This motif, I just basically downloaded a clip art piece off the internet and basically sewed it onto some faux leather and then stitched it on top of the main panel. Now, you've got to make sure it's no more than 3 inches wide, and you've got to make sure it's definitely in this section here. So this is about 3.5 inches height. Don't go past that because it gets too bulky around the other areas. Now, if you are a beginner, I do say add piping. You don't need to. You don't have to add piping. You don't have to add piping if you're an advanced bag maker. Just basically add the piping if you want to. I'm going to be adding the piping because it's another technique that I'm going to be teaching on the sewing machine. But honestly, you don't have to add the piping. You don't even have to add the bag feet if you don't want to, but I like it because it stands up perfectly without it toppling over. The only other templates that are in here is these ones here, which are for the anchors that I've talked to you regarding, or the D-ring tabs, which are these two here. Now, in the Easter pack, I'm going to keep reverting back to the Easter pack for those who have got the Easter pack. But I'm sorry, if you're a general public, you're going to be hearing the Easter name again. So in your pack, you'll get some 3D printed Emily B design templates. Just ignore these. Apart from those triangles and dash marks on this template, you can go ahead and use these. They were all in different colours, so you might have a yellow one, you might have an orange one, you might have a blue one, or green one, or a yellow one. Just all in 80s colours they are. So if you do not have those plastic acrylic templates, you can go for these, cut them out. Now, if you want to make this as easy as possible, this here is a Decaville stabilizer, which we will stick into the center. Now, personally, I'm not doing that in the actual video because the fabric that I've chosen is cork fabric, and it's got a good sturdy back. Now, if you're using cotton or cotton fabric, cotton canvas, or a very, very thin PU. So if you're using the PU that I've designed here, so this leopard print rainbow, please go ahead and stabilize it with the Decaville. You don't need to interface it. Now in the video, because I'm using a really heavy duty cork, I won't be using this stabilizer, but I will be using this template to draw around where the seam allowance is. So just watch the video and let me talk you through everything. So I'm going to jump to the overhead camera and see how we get on there. Gonna have to bear with me. Right. Okay, so I'm not using the fabric that came in the kits because I've already made one in this style. I'm going to be making a totally different fabric colorway, and I will tell you where I got that fabric from when I come round to it. So there is a few things that I'm going to be doing slightly different from the pattern. Is the stabilizer that goes in, the interfacing that goes inside the handle. In the pattern, I tell you to cut, where's the handles? I tell you to cut the interface in the same size as your handle measurements. Personally, I'm going to show you the reason why I'm not doing that is because I'm using a heavy stabilizer. So I've gone ahead and shrunk down the stabilizer to 2 inches wide and a bit shorter on the two edge. That just gives me enough stabilizer in the middle because this is quite thick cork. If you're using cotton canvas or if you're using a thin um, PU leather or faux leather or vinyl, please go ahead and interface the full width of the actual strap. Right, okay, so I'm just going to just basically let you have a quick look over this and then we're going to go ahead and start making. Okay. Okay, so you will have your pattern, you might have the paper booklet or the digital download. There is a few notes. Please read those before you go ahead. You can always contact me on social media if you need me to. You will need either Gutmann HD2 glue, or I haven't got any of that, so I've got this glue. This glue basically is for sticking on some of the parts that we need on the bag and to hold it into place. Okay, so let's start. To prepare your fabric, you need to interface everything that and put the fusible fleece on. I will basically show you what parts and how I've done that as I go along. So first of all, we're going to get the handle tabs. So you've got 4 pieces of those. I'm using cork, but in your Easter packs, you will either have silver, gunmetal silver or black, depending. I gave a bit of a variety, so everybody's bag is not the same. But so on the back, you will interface just in the center, so you've got a good section all the way around. You're going to get a marking tool and a rule. I'm using the little Stitcher Sews quarters rule. It's got all the markings and 1/8 to 3/8 and 1/2 inch marks, so which is good. So we're going to do the 1/2 inch marks. Might need a biro as well. If you hear me sniffling, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a flu. Okay, so that's that one. And put this over. You will need some quilter's tape because we'll be doing a lot of sticking in place here. Okay. And then you're going to do that for all 4 pieces. So I'm just going to put those to one side. Going to get the quilter's tape. And you're going to run on the inside of those 2 lines quilter's tape. Just snip the old section off. So that's on the inside of both of those lines. You might want to use a brayer or something that you can crease with. If you're using cotton fabric, please go ahead. You can use your iron to press these into place. I'm going to have to use the brayer and some clips. So you're going to fold this on the line. So technically I put the line on one of the markings on the mat so I know where I'm folding it. And with this marking. Give those a good roll over. Now, if, like mine are kind of popping up, so I'm going to have to put some clips on. It's only temporary. Okay, so you'll go ahead and do the rest of those. So I'm just going to quickly do those off camera and then meet you back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done those. Mine keep trying to pop up, but just ignore that. Right, so you've got some rectangle rings. Now, if you've got the Easter pack, you'll find that the rectangle rings have screws in. Just make sure they're done up really tight. This is for if you are struggling to sew around seams, you can actually unscrew that, take this out, take this off, and I will show you that once we get round, but just make sure your screws are all done up quite tight. Doesn't have to be extremely tight, but just tight for now. Okay, so I'm just gonna bring down my clips. I'm gonna pop some quarters tape along that little edge there. Like so. Then I'm going to feed this down, so I'm just going to give myself some more. Okay. So I'm going to grab one of these. Now, if you're using the rectangle rings from the Easter pack, the bit that's got the screw needs to be the one that feeds on, not the top. It's got to be the bit that you feed on. So we're going to feed that on. And then we're going to go down to 1.5 inches. Now, I tend to use the mat, put the edge of the strap, the handle tab, to one of the markings and pop the rectangle ring 1.5 inches down, peel off the backing tape and flip that over. Might need to move some clips if you're like me and having to put clips on. Open it up. And then you're just going to clip that into place. So that's one done. Go ahead and finish off those and do exactly the same with the these three that you did with this one. So I've gone ahead and prepped a little bit further on those, but I'll show you what I did. And basically, just take off the clips if you had to put clips on. You're going to get some more quarters tape and about 1/2 inch down or 3/4 of an inch down. As long as you've gone over where it overlaps, you're just going to run 2 lines of quarters tape on the wrong side. And because mine keep trying to pop open, I'm just going to pop some more clips on so we can move on to the next step. Okay, so I'm just going to pop all that to one side. Okay, so we're going to get the template now of the main body, and we're going to cut this section out here. So if you're using the templates, the paper pattern, you might want to basically trace this off, then cut this out. Don't cut the templates out of your paper pattern. That's just an adamant thing. Don't cut it out because you might end up losing them. Right, okay, so we are working on the next page. Let's think then what we're on. So we're on this page here. So we're going to go and get one of the main outer body pieces. So you might have used faux leather, cork, vinyl, real leather, cotton canvas. You might have used anything basically. So I've used faux leather. I've interfaced that faux leather with normal um, medium weight iron-on interfacing. And then I have fused fusible fleece onto the wrong side, and you'll notice that I've got a 3/8 to half an inch gap all the way along, all the way around the outer edge. You do not want any stabilizer, heavy stabilizer, which is the fusible fleece in this section here, because it's going to get so bulky if you do so. Now you're probably wondering where this is from. This is from the Little Stitcher size. This is faux leather or vinyl. It's printed. It's beautiful. Right, so we're going to just find the top and the bottom centre. So I'm just going to fold this in half. And we're just going to mark or snip within the seam allowance where the centre top and centre bottom is. I'm just a bit confused with what that's done there. Right, okay. Then you're going to get your template. Now you're going to pop your template on to match up the edges, and you will find that your centre top and centre bottom will match where the paper ends in the centre. And I personally add some clips so it doesn't move. And you probably can see where we're going with this, obviously because you've got the pattern, but you're going to get one of your tabs and peel off the backing tape. Now I'm going to do mine one at a time. So peel off those two backing tapes, match up the raw edge to the bottom, and you're just going to pop that right there. Okay, so take those clips off, pull it up so you don't knock the placement of this. And then personally, we're going to sew this into place now. But if you aren't using ones that pop open, like mine's popping open, you can go ahead and stick the next one on. But I'm going to have to do that separately. So first of all, we're going to measure to make sure this is perfect. We're going to measure down from the rectangle ring. So we know we've got 1.5 inches of overlap underneath. So I'm going to go and measure down 3/4 of an inch. Actually, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5/8. I'm just popping a mark. So I know that is where I'm sewing across and then down. So I'm going to go sew up, across on that mark, and then down again. I'm going to use a stitch length of a number 4. If you're using cotton canvas or cotton, use a stitch length number 3. Just you're going to need one, just a top stitch. Now in my sewing machine, I'm using a size 16 needle, which is 16/100 needle, and I'm using Gutermann Sew All thread, which is a polyester thread. So let me just go over to the. Okay, excuse the flickering light. I can't get past that, unfortunately. So stitch length number 4, we're doing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Don't need to reverse your stitch at the start. And you're going to stop around about that mark. Twist this, pivot this round. Okay, so I can't go that way because I will get jump stitches. So I'm going to go and twist this and reverse my stitch a few stitches. And then twist this round. Then I know my foot is free away from the rectangle ring. Okay, so I'm going to do the other side. Just get rid of that mark. There you go. So because we're doing the other side, we need to flip it over and attach the template. Make sure it's on the centre marks. Oops. Peel off those two backing tapes. And attach that where the placement is. Okay. And then once again, we're just going to measure down. I'm just going to measure across because I know that's spot on. And then I'm just going to sew up, across and down like I did on this one. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done those. Now it's totally up to you. You can go ahead and pop some rivets in there like I did on this one. If you've got like a green machine or rivet press, you can go ahead and do that. In the Easter pack, you would have had some Chicago screws, so you can put those in as well, but not do the tassel. Totally up to you. Personally, on this one, I'm not going to put any rivets on. I'm just going to leave as is because I actually quite like the contrast and not have too much bling on it. So if you are a bit curious of this might get into your seam allowance, you can always bring it down, pop some tape on if you want to. When I say tape, I mean like painter's tape, masking tape or something. But however, if you just flip it down, it is out of your seam allowance. Now, if you're still a bit curious, don't want it getting into your seam allowance, you can do, if you've got these rectangle rings from the Easter pack, you can undo that screw, like so, pull that out, and basically, once we finish the bag, we can install this back together again. Personally, I'm going to keep it as is, and just screw that back into place. Okay, but you can undo them if you want to. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other body piece, so the other body piece, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so you will have both of those finished. Now this part of the sew along is if you're adding piping. If you're not adding piping, just watch and you will move on to the next part of the pattern for you. We're going to do the piping on this. So with your template, you've got a piping little mark. You're going to cut that triangle out, and then basically this is the start of the piping. I'm just going to put those over, pop this back into place. I'm just going to get a marking tool and mark where that mark is. Righto. So just within the seam lines, I've just added a mark, flip this over and do the same. Okay, so in the Easter pack you would have had some piping. If you're not got an Easter pack, you're just going to use some piping that I've mentioned within the pattern. Some you can use whatever thickness you want, but I personally just like the thin thickness, but totally up to you. Right, okay, so where the one marking is, we're going to start. Now we can't start off on a raw edge. We're going to have to fold this like into a T, like so. So if I just bring that round and fold that into a T shape, and we're going to pop this. So you want this piping cord to be 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now, if you're using the piping cord that was within the Easter pack, you will find that there will be 1/8 of an inch of the actual fabric from underneath showing. So we're going to go all the way around to that mark there. Listen. You don't need to cut into piping because it's already got some bias tape on, so it will go around your edge smoothly. You will have enough piping in your Easter packs for both sides, front and back of your bag. Okay, so I'm going to cut it so it comes to the bottom here. So it's just past, about half an inch past that mark. And I've done that for a reason because we need to fold it at this end as well. Okay. So you should have piping that ends about half an inch away from the bottom edge. Keep that part because we need that for the other ones. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and change it over to my zipper foot. You might have a piping foot. If you've got a piping foot, use the instructions on how to use a piping foot, but I'm going to add this onto my sewing machine. And then I will show you what I will do is I will sew as close as I can get to the cord side, so where the stitching is to start off with. I will go over these parts here a few times so it holds the fabric into place, and then I will do a second row of stitches. Now the second row of stitches I'm doing on the edge of the fabric of the piping cord. Reason being is it does tend to curl up. You'll notice once you start taking the clips off after you've sewn the first row, it will start curling up. You want to make sure that's nice and flat. So you'll see from the sewing machine anyway. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and sew the piping on. So I've got my zipper foot on, so I'm just going to get a tailor's awl. Now I use a tailor's awl to hold this part into place because it will bounce back. Okay, so I'm just going to get my needle down so that holds it into place. I'm going to use a stitch length number 4 because we're only base stitching this into place. And so as close as you can get, or as close as you want to get to that piping cord, but not on the piping cord, if you understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so if I just show you on this camera, it's trying to roll up on this outer edge of the piping cord, as you can probably see here. We're going to sew just on the edge of that piping cord tape, just to hold it into place. You can use your zipper foot if you want to. And also go over the section where you folded again, just so it shrinks it down a little bit more. And it's not bulky when we come to put everything together. Okay, you go ahead and repeat the same process for the other front body piece, and we'll meet you back. Right, okay, so we're going to move on to the D-ring tabs now. Right, so like I explained at the start of the video, if you're using cotton canvas or a very thin faux leather, thin cork fabric, or whatever you're using, if it's very thin, you need to use Decaville stabilizer in the centre. And you need to make sure you've got that 1/4 of an inch all the way around, not at the top, but just around these sections here. If you're like me, where you're using a heavy stabilizer, my cork is quite thick. You're going to get the smaller template and draw that in the centre. Then you're going to get your larger template and pop those markings on. So you've got 6 triangles to pop on and 2 little dash marks. Now those marks are for you to snip into. So the 2 dashed lines we're going to snip into, and we're not going to go past the Decaville or where you've drawn the centre on. Then you're just going to cut out these triangles. And you can do that for all of them. The reason why we're doing that is so it folds better within these sections. I haven't got the best of, there you go, scissors there. Now you're going to be doing this for both, either if you're using the D-ring, which I've got here to demonstrate, and the anchor. The anchors are technically not designed to do this, so I've had to make this technique up within the pattern. These anchors are generally to go over a crossbody bag. Like, let me use an example. The uh, the rose bucket bag that I sell as a pattern, this generally sits on the edge. You would have made your bag to start off with, and then you implement this part at the very end. But you can use it for this technique as well. Okay, so let's take my ring off. I'm going a bit hot flush here. Right, okay, so first of all, we're going to get some quilter's tape, and within the inner part of that part in the centre, by that line, we're going to pop some quilter's tape. Now you'll be popping quite a bit of little pieces. So this is the most trickiest part of the pattern. When it comes, well, one of the trickiest parts of the patterns. So just take your time. Okay, so I'm going to peel off all the backing tapes off all those quilter's tapes. Okay, and then you're going to fold right on those lines there. Now you'll find that because we've snipped into certain areas, it won't want to fold any further. I tend to find leaving those little corners at the bottom to last, because we can put some more quilter's tape on top. Before I go any further, I just want to make sure it's nice and symmetrical on the main. Then I'm just going to put some quilter's tape along that bottom edge so we can stick those two corners into place. And I really do squash it down, so go from this edge. If you're using cotton canvas or cotton, go ahead and press it. Be even better if you press it. Okay. So if you're using cotton canvas, my advice is not to do the anchors on this part. If you're using the anchors, you'll need faux leather or cork fabric. So first of all, if you're doing the D-ring, just follow these steps. So you're going to feed your D-ring on to where the neck is of the tab finishes. So there. And you're going to stick that into place with some, Just change my mic. Okay, if you're not doing the D-ring, just put that to one side. Oh, when you've got your D-ring on, just sew across there as close as you can get to the D-ring. Okay, so because we're not doing the D-ring, I'm just going to really squash that down. One keeps wanting to pop up. We're going to run quilter's tape along that neck on the wrong side. So I'm doing the anchor technique at the moment, guys. I will come back to the D-ring a bit later on when we attach the tab to the side gusset. Okay, you're going to peel off those backing tapes. And you're going to fold it down where the neck finishes of the tab. And you're going to stick that into place. Now a bit of snail to go over that side. Okay, so from the bottom edge, we're going to mark off 1 inch. And we're going to mark on each side. Just like that. So at your sewing machine, you're just going to sew on this top area here, not this bottom area. And you're going to reverse your stitch quite a few times at the start and at the end. And you're going to do 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going to use a top stitch of 4. However, depending on your fabric type, you might want to go down to a top stitch 3. Okay, so I'm only sewing that top area and I'm doing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And remember to reverse your stitch a few times. I'm just doing 1 stitch and reversing, and then done that about 3 times. Okay, so I've gone ahead and top stitched just around that top area. I'm just going to snip off the extra bits. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that to one side. We're going to get the anchor and we're going to flip it over and take those 2 screws out. So we just need the back part of the anchor. Right, okay, so you got a front and back section. We're just going to pop the front section to one side. We're going to get the tab. You'll see where the D-ring is, there's a ledge. You're going to pop this as close as it will go up to that edge and flip it over. Okay, then you're going to get your marking tool and just mark where the 2 screw marks are. Okay, so you should have 2 dots. You're going to get some hole punching tool and you're going to punch those 2 marks. The trick is don't get anywhere near the edge. You should be about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Okay, so you're going to flip this over, and then on the reverse side, you're going to pop some quilter's tape on the bottom part. So that's just below where those punch holes are. Just put those in there so I don't lose them. Okay. You're going to get one of your side gussets. You're going to find that centre top and you're going to mark it. Then you're going to measure down 2 inches and mark again. Okay, so I've just added a mark. I do actually end up using this again when I stick this into place because I just like to make sure it's nice and level. So we're going to peel off the backing tape, flip this over, and the top edge of your tab will rest on where that 2-inch mark is. You're going to stick that down. Okay, so where you left off stitching, so where your stitches end and start, we're going to start again and stitch just the bottom area. So I'm going to reverse my stitch a few times, go down, around the corner, around that corner, and then back up to where there and reverse my stitch. Don't go past those 2 marks because you will struggle getting this part on. So meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, 1/8 of an inch away, going over a few times. Okay, so we've got the tab now attached. I'm just going to cut off any thread pieces. So the next bit is going to be a little bit tricky, so just take your time. Okay, so you're going to get your anchor back and feed that down. Okay, and you're going to get your heart and line that up as best as you can. I generally just do one side at a time. If you're struggling, you can use the tailor's awl. So this triangle of the tip of the anchor should feed down quite easily into a little pocket. Just gonna put my tailors all through. I can line this part up, put that over like that. Okay, so that one side's done. We're going to do the other side. So just feed your tailors all in through that hole to make sure you're going through to the front. Very hardest not to knock it. And don't lose your screw down in that little pocket either because we haven't stitched it. I'll tighten that up. Okay, so this is where the specialist glue comes in. I've got this glue, but it's totally up to you if you want to use the Gutermann HD2. Let me just move my ring because I'm worried that I might chuck it in the bin or something. Okay, so you're going to get a bit of glue. It has to be a gummy glue and it has to be a very strong adhesive. So on the back here, I'm just going to pop some glue on the back, just a little bit there, and we're just going to stick that down. So technically you're meant to leave this for at least a couple of hours. I've gone ahead and done the other side. So I'm just going to pop this to one side, put something heavy on it, and hopefully it will work out. Okay, so that one's stuck into place. Now, if you've got the D-ring tab, you will pop your D-ring tab and then just sew all the way around at the 2-inch mark. That's as easy as that one is. And you can put a rivet in if you want to, totally up to you. Personally, if I'm doing just the D-ring, I will do a cross. I can't do a cross with this, but we have got glue to hold it into place as well. So we're going to pop this to one side with the other one, and we're going to move on to the base and the bag feet. Okay, so we have just noticed a few mistakes within the pattern and we are cussing ourselves. So the images 27 and 28 aren't what the step is. So image 27 and 28, I'm referring to 29 and 30. And then basically the step 23 should be 27 and 28. So just bear that in mind, please. There is a few mistakes. These will be corrected, and when the day comes of the advent calendar or when you are um, general release, don't worry about that, it'll be corrected. But when it comes to the advent calendar release date of the pattern, I will have that change and put that into the chat group, and you can have that those steps sorted out and the digital download. But basically, step 21 should say 29 and 30, images 29 and 30, and then step 23 should say 27 and 28. So just basically change those around. It's just those two are mixed up there. Okay, so let's get back to what we were doing. Right, so we're moving on to the bag base. So we're on step 23 with images 27 and 28. We're going to measure in 3/8 of an inch and mark. So this is where the little stitch of sews quilters rule comes in handy because it's got the 3/8 of an inch mark. And we're just going to draw a line on there. So on the back of the wrong side of your fabric, you should have interfacing and deckerville, and your deckerville heavy shouldn't be anywhere near your seam allowance. Okay, so we're going to get one of the main, pop the bag feet to one side at the moment. We're going to get one of the main body pieces. We've already found the centre bottom. We're just going to fold this in half and find the two long centres and mark of the base. And I'm also going to transfer a few markings onto my base on this side as well. Just for later reference, I'm just going to do a little within the seam allowance. Yeah, just done 1/2 inch marks, and they're the 3/8 of an inch away marks. Use marks that you can know will disappear. This disappears with just a bit of water, and it rubs off basically. So we're going to pop this right sides together along this bottom edge and match up the centres. Okay, so we're going to sew between this mark here along this edge to this mark here. We're not going to sew in these two sections here, this top, bottom and top. We're going to do 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to reverse our stitch at the start and at the end. And I'm going to knock my stitch length down to a standard stitch length, which on my sewing machine is a stitch length 2.5. I've got my Teflon foot on here. You might want to put a walking foot on, totally up to you. But my machine coats with a Teflon foot. Okay, so I'm starting off on that line, so I'm not touching the other side of the line. Make sure my stitch length is at a 2.5. Few stitches, reverse, and then go across. You don't want to go over that line, that drawn line that you've done. Okay. Okay, so I've stitched from there to there. Okay, so we're going to bring this down and we want the seam, the marking that I did isn't even showing. I didn't do a very good half an inch, did I? So I'm just going to pop that mark back in. Make that longer. Right, okay, so if you've got cotton fabric, you can go ahead and press this. What you need to do is make sure the seam is pointing towards the base. I haven't got that, so I'm just going to have to use a seam roller. Okay, so we're going to top stitch from that mark to that mark. We're not top stitching in this section or this section. And we're doing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge and reversing my stitch at start and at the end. I'm going to use this top stitch length of number 4. If you're using cotton canvas, use top stitch length number 3. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. We're going to repeat the same process and attach the other side. So match up the centres. Flip it over. And just click all this into place. Okay, and once again, exactly the same process with only stitching together from this mark here to this mark. We're not stitching in these sections here, doing 3/8 of an inch and the standard stitch length. Reverse your stitch at start and at the end. Okay, same as last time. You want the seam to point towards the base. I can just barely see that mark. Obviously didn't do a good enough job. There you go. Either press it or roll it. I'm just going to roll it. Okay, and then I'm just going to top stitch using the stitch length number 4 or number 3, depending on what fabric you're using, from there to there and not go into that section there. Okay, so we've done that. Just get rid of those markings. Okay, so we're working on where the bag feet placement are. So we are now on image 34. Right, so we're measuring in 3 inches, and then we're measuring. Let me just read this. With one of the bodies is attached to the main base, measure 5/8. Right, okay. I wrote this ages ago, guys, so I forgot the measurements. Okay, so we're measuring in 3 inches from the short edge, and we're measuring down 5/8. So one, and where they join and pop a mark. Same with this side. Okay, same with this, the other side. Okay, so I've got those marks. We can add a centre foot if you want to, so I'm going to do that as well. So image 35. So then from the centre, 6.5 inches. Right, okay. So the base is 3 inches wide. So at the 1.5 mark, and you should have 6.5 inches from the middle. Okay, so depending on your bag feet, if you're going with the bag feet that was in the advent calendar, you'll need to do one slot. If you've got bag feet that have got a washer, follow the instructions of the washer instructions. Generally, it's very self-explanatory. We're just going to pop probably just under 1/8 of an inch little slit on all of those. I'm using a craft knife. And pop the feet through. In the calendar, you would have had 6 feet, so you've got a spare one. So if you do make another one of these, you only need to buy 4, and then obviously you've got the centre bit there. Okay, so you're just going to peel these open, prise these open, shall I say, not peel these. Sometimes they are stuck together. There you go. Doesn't help I cut my nails yesterday as well. Okay, so if you've got some gaffer tape or duct tape, depending on what manufacturer you're using, my advice is to stick some on these so it doesn't ruin your lining. Also, will make your base a bit stiffer, which helps. Just cover up this bit here. Okay. Okay, so you've got your bag feet in place and your base in place. So we're going to pop this to one side and we're going to move on to the zipper gusset of the bag. Okay, so you've got your zipper gusset pieces. Now you'll have two lining pieces with interfacing attached to those. Two outer main fabric pieces, which can be whatever fabric you're using for your main outer. You'll need interfacing on those, and then you will need the fusible fleece. You generally find that you don't need any fusible fleece in the seam allowance areas, so that's between 3/8 of an inch or half an inch. I've technically gone half an inch because this is quite sturdy faux leather. You'll need your zip, number 5 zipper, and you'll need to put your zip pulls on. So you install one zip pull this side and bring it into the center, and then install the other zip pull into the center so they can open up like so. What we're going to do just quickly is just sew over the nylon zip on each end so we don't lose any zipper pulls. I'm just going to use a large stitch length for that. Stitch length number 4 or 5. I'm just going to go over the teeth at the two short ends. Okay, so I generally push the zip pulls over to the one side. It's just how I roll and it's how I become a bit lazy. Now I know this isn't matching, so because I wanted to save as much as possible of this fabric. So this is my pet hate. This is, it doesn't match. Now normally if I'm doing a bag, I want it to match, but I'm just going to do it this way. Right, okay, so on the right side of one of the outer pieces, run quilter's tape along that top edge. Okay, peel off that backing tape. Get your number 5 zipper and flip this over so it's wrong side facing up and match up that edge. Stick into place. Now I've got that really overhanging, and there's a reason for that is so I don't have to move the zip pull when I've got it under my presser foot. Okay, so now I've got that into place, I'm going to get the quilter's tape on the wrong side and stick some quilter's tape on top of the zipper. Peel off the backing tape, and I'm going to get a lining piece. Flip that over so it's right side facing down, and you're going to match up the edges and stick this into place. Make sure it's perfectly. Okay, so we're going to sew 3/8 of an inch away from this edge, reverse our stitch at the start and at the end. You can put a zipper foot on if you want to. I'm going to use my Teflon foot because I know my Teflon foot will go over it, okay, if I do it from this side. And basically reverse our stitch at the start and at the end. And then I'm going to come over to my iron, which is here, and then I'm going to press it open, but you'll see that on the camera. I'm going to use a standard stitch length. So depending on your sewing machine, mine's a 2.5. And remember, it's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm just going to move those out of the way, bring this into view. Working on the fabric side first, I'm just going to finger press that. Flip this over, give that a good finger press first, or the best I can. Flip that back, and then I'm going to press it. I've got it on a medium heat as well because I've got vinyl underneath. Okay. Then I'm just going to go one step further because this keeps trying to peel back. Going to match up the edges. And put some clips down this edge. Oops. What you want to make sure before we go and stitch and add the other side is that your zipper pull isn't going to get attacked by the lining on the other side. So before I go ahead and top stitch, I'm just going to attach the other side of the zipper. So I'm going to run quarter tape along this edge here. I'm just going to flip it around. Peel off the backing tape. Okay, so we're going to pop this right side facing down, match up this edge here to this edge here, and match up the zipper tape edge. Put that over, just make sure that's spot on. And then repeat the same process with this one. Run quarters tape along the wrong edge of the zipper, wrong side of the zipper, shall I say, along that edge. Peel off the backing tape, grab the lining piece, right side facing down, and stick that into place. Okay, and then we're just going to stitch along this section here, 3/8 of an inch away, and standard stitch length. Use your zipper foot if you need be. I can get away with my Teflon foot. And reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. And we're just going to finger press that. Make sure it's not in the zipper pull area. Now I'm just going to test that because, oh no, it's fine. It's not near it. I had a funny feeling it might be close, but it isn't. Okay, so we're just going to, careful of those clips so you don't get them burnt with your iron. Okay, and like I did last time, I'm just going to put clips on it so it stretch it out. Okay, I'm just going to double check to make sure that doesn't catch. Also going to bend it like it would be on the bag so it doesn't catch. I don't want it to catch. Okay, so we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'm using the stitch length number 4 on both of these, and then I'm going to sew across there, and then we're going to trim off the excess. But before I sew across, I'm going to move my zip pulls into the centre, but you'll see me do that on the camera on my sewing machine. I'm going to knock my stitch length up to a stitch length number 4. So 1/8 of an inch, or if you can't cope with 1/8 of an inch, do 1/4 of an inch away. Flip it round to the other side. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my zipper pulls into the centre. Okay, and then I'm just going to sew over the zip part because we're going to have to trim off some excess now. And I'm doing that 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Okay, so I'm knocking my stitch length up to quite a large stitch length, and I'm going to stitch all the way around the outer edge so all the layers are together. So I've got mine on stitch length number 5. If your sewing machine doesn't go up to number 5, just have it on number 4, and you're doing just under 1/8 of an inch away from the edge so you can get all the layers into one piece. Okay, so it should be something like that. Now we're just going to trim off all the excess. I've got a little bit of an overhang on the gusset, so I'm just going to trim that off as well. I might have had a crease or something, or my roll might have not been on properly. So line that up. Okay, so that's the zipper gusset finished. Okay, so that part's done. We're going to add the side gussets, but with the side gussets, we have to do some cutting on the side gussets before we attach. So just bear with me. Okay, so let's get our two side gussets. They should be dry by now. I know mine are slightly, probably not fully dry. You're going to get your zipper gusset lining pieces as well. Okay. So on the bottom two edges, so make sure your D-rings are pointing towards the top. On the two bottom edges, on the bottom corners, you're going to have to cut some squares out. So the measurement is in the pattern, and it's images 45 and 46. So talk about it there, and you need to do this for both lining and main outer. So it's 3/8. You need a square, and you do the same on this side as well. Same on this one. Okay, and then do the same with this one. Okay, so we're going to cut these squares out. Okay, and this one. And then these ones as well. Okay. Okay, so you've got your zip gusset. Put your zips in the centre. You're going to get one of your main outer side gussets, flip that over, and clip that into place. So you'll have the cutout squares pointing towards this way on this side. Do the same with this one, but this time we're going to have the cutout squares pointing to this side. Flip that over. Get the two lining pieces. The cutout squares need to be pointing out on this side, on this part here. And then the same with this one, flip it over so the cutout squares are pointing towards this side. Attach that. Okay, so before I go any further, I just like to make sure my D-rings are pointing towards the bottom. Okay, so we're just going to sew 3/8 of an inch, reverse our stitches starting at the end on both of those sides. Then I'm going to open it up and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away. And then I'm going to stitch around the outer edges just so everything is one piece. So stitch length, standard stitch length to start off with, 3/8 of an inch away. Reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. Do that for both sides. Okay, so knock your stitch length up to top stitching length. Open these two pieces out. So you've got your lining, then you've got your top, your main outer. You're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away. Just make sure that's all. Do the same for the other side. Seam should be pointing down as well. Okay, so I'm knocking the stitch length up to a stitch length 5. I'm just going to sew down the two long edges and along the bottom bit, not the cutout sections. I'm doing that 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, just so it's all one piece and easier for the last few steps. Same on the other side as well. Start off with that bottom bit because okay, so you should have that all completed. Let me just have a little bit of a tidy up so I don't lose anything down the back of the table. Right, okay, so just trim off any pieces of thread. Now, if you have got what I've got underneath, I'll just show you because I want we all do some mistakes. I'll flip it over. The lining of this slightly moved, but as long as it's within the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, the lining will be caught when we join the whole bag together, so don't stress over that. So we're going to put this to one side and we're going to move on to the next part. Okay, so we're moving on to the inside zip pocket. So you should have one of your body pieces with interfacing on and one of your zip pocket pieces with interfacing on. and you should have an 8-inch zip. Mine's a continuous zip. Just be careful that your zip pull doesn't come off at the end. So we're going to find the centre top and the centre bottom again of this and snip into the seam allowance. I'm going to do the same with this. I'm just going to find the centre of one of the long edges. Okay, so from that centre of the curve, I'm going to measure down 1 inch. Then we're going to pop this right side facing down, and the side that we've clipped in the centre, we're going to match that up. So the centre, so the number 6 of the quarter roll is my centre. I'm just going to match up that raw edge there and pin this into place. Okay, from this edge here of the pocket, lining it up, making sure that's the centre. I'm going to measure down 1 inch, and we're going to draw a 6-inch line. So from the centre, which is my number 6, I'm going to draw to number 9, and then from my 6 on this side, I'm going to draw to number 3. You should have 1 inch either side. Then you're going to measure down 3/8 of an inch. Let's use this one. I'm losing my markings on this one, so it's best if we use this one. And draw another line. So you should have a letterbox with joining those two marks up on that side. You're going to find that centre of that letterbox and just give it a quick draw. So you should have 3 horizontal lines. From the 2 vertical lines, you're going to measure 3/8 of an inch or half an inch, doesn't matter, but you're going to measure in and mark. And then we're just going to draw some triangles. Like so. Okay, so I am going to use a dark thread on my sewing machine because it's just what I've got in for my bag. My advice is to go with the same fabric colour. So you might want to change your thread over to match your fabric colour, but I'm just going to stick with the dark. So I'm going to sew all the way around on that outer edge, not touching anywhere in the centre of that rectangle. And I'm going to reverse my stitch at the start and at the end. I'm going to use the standard stitch length, which is a 2.5 on my sewing machine, but it depends on your sewing machine. And remember to reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. And you're only sewing on the outer line. Make sure your needle is down before you pivot round. Okay, so I've sewed all the way around. Just get rid of those pins now. Turn your iron on because we're going to be pressing in a minute. So that centre line to where those 2 vertical inner lines are, get your rotary cutter and be really careful not to cut anything on the sewn lines. And you just cut from there to there. And then where those triangles are, we're going to cut into. The trick is don't cut the sewn line, but you want to cut as very close as possible. And you want to do that for both. Okay, then you're going to get your iron. We're going to finger crease this first. And then you're just going to feed this through to the wrong side of the body. But the pocket lining will be right side facing out. And you're going to roll best you can. So I'm just going to press that bottom edge first. And flip it to this side. And the trick is you shouldn't have any creases on the main body in those four corners. And give that a really good press. Now, if you've got creases on the pocket lining, I personally don't have a problem. Some people do, some designers do. No one's going to see it. So, like I've got a crease in that corner. No one's going to see it. Turn that up. Okay, so as long as you've got no creases on this side, then that's fine. That crease is that crease there, so it's indenting coming through, but there was no crease. Right, so lining side facing up, and we're going to run quarters tape along the top and the bottom of that rectangle box. Just make sure your zip works. Peel off the backing tape of those. And we're going to pop this right side face, the pocket line right side facing down. Zip. And make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, flip it over just to make sure it's not curled over. And we're just going to go 1/8 of an inch all the way around and reverse our stitch. Start off in the bottom corner. I just find that more pleasing to the eye, but however, if you are using the same contrast coloured thread as the same colour thread as the lining fabric, then start off in the corner. However, if you're keeping with a dark one on a bright, if your thread is dark and this is light, then it doesn't matter where you start off because you're going to see your thread anyway. So I'm top stitching with a stitch length number 3. I'm just going to let you know this is one of my pet hates, but I've realised I haven't got any pink thread, so I'm just rolling with the blue that I've been using. Okay, I've stitched all the way around. Okay, so you need to trim off the excess zipper. Just make sure you haven't got your fabric caught in your zipper, in your scissors. And then you're going to get your other pocket lining. That's my base. Don't want that one. Want this one. Right side facing down. And you're going to get some pins. And you're just pinning the 2 layers of pocket lining. You're not pinning this section, this body part. And you're pinning it all the way around on the 4 sides, making sure it's not pinned to the main body. Okay, so flip this right side facing up. You're going to sew. That hasn't pinned properly, is it? I just get this double checked out. It's better. Right, okay, so we're going to sew from this side, but we're going to move this body as we go along. Just pop your zip in the centre, zipper pull in the centre. You're going to sew about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, all the way around. And reverse stitch at the start and at the end. Use a standard stitch length on your sewing machine as well. Remove your pins as you go, you don't want to get those damaged and damage your needle. Okay, so that part's done. Just give that a quick press. Okay, so we found the centre bottom of this one. I'm going to grab the other main body. And we're going to find the centre top and the centre bottom of this one. Okay. Some of these tools I don't need now. Just bear with me, please. I now work on a really a lot smaller table than what I used to, and I have to tidy up as we go along. As my brain doesn't like it, and it just will stop working. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. Get rid of these pins. Right, okay, so get your base lining piece. I'm going to need to find the centres of the 2 long edges. Okay. Okay, so you're going to get your two body pieces, and we're going to attach exactly how we did with the outer pieces. We're going to find the 3/8 mark. Um, we're going to just draw the 3/8 mark in on this. Don't need to top stitch on this, so we don't need to transfer it onto the other side. And let me just show you what section we are up to on the pattern. Step 57, not 57, photo 57. Now attach a baseline and blah blah blah. It does say you can top stitch. I don't think you need to, but I'm just going to press it really well. So we're on step 44, which is image 57. Okay, so match up the two centres. And you're just going to sew 3/8 of an inch away from the edge here, from this mark here to this mark here, using a standard stitch length and reverse your stitch at start and at the end. You are not sewing in those two sections there. Okay, so I've done that bit. I'm just going to open that up. I'll give it a press in a minute once we've attached this part here. Exactly the same. Sewing from this side and from that mark to that mark there. Reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, get your iron and we're going to give that a really good press. Like last time, you need your seams to point towards the base. So that's that one side. Same with this one. Seam needs to go towards the base. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is get your main outer pieces that you've already attached together. I'm going to put that wrong side facing up. If you've got a preference, which is your back of your main outer, put the zip pocket on that side. So we're doing wrong side to wrong side. Match up those centres, those bases. So. Make sure that's all. And we're just going to clip around the outer edges. You sometimes find that your lining has grown, or you might have been slightly cut wrong. My lining's a bit big on this bottom bit here, but just go with it at the moment. We will sort that out at a later stage. Before you go any further, just make sure your pocket lining is pointing down towards the base. Okay, so we are on image 58. So now attach the body lining piece to the wrong side of the outer main body piece. Now sew together around the curved body pieces only, not the base. So we're not sewing across this bit here. We're just going to go from here to here where that seam is, and the same with this side from here to here. Reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. And personally, I go from this side here. Because then we know we're not sewing over the the base and B the piping. So we're just going to base stitch within the seam allowance on that one. Okay, so over to the sewing machine. I'm going to knock my stitch length up to stitch length number 4. Just going to move that clip. And remember, we're not sewing the base, we're just sewing the curved sides. I'm just going to move these because I'm going to lose them. And if you notice what I'm actually doing, and this is going to help you in the long run when you come to putting the bag together, I'm actually sewing as close as I can get to that piping cord. And all will be revealed when we come to attach the bag together. So just bear with me while I go around nice and slowly, making sure I go over that sewn line that I did as close as possible to that piping cord. So that's the first side done. Start off on the other side. And like before, get as close as you can to that piping cord, and you're not touching that base. And just get rid of all this. Okay, so the reason why we've gone and sewed as close as possible to the piping cord is when we come to join the gusset bag together, we will actually sew on that line. And even though we sew from this side, we will basically, before we move on to the next part, we will just make sure we've got on top of that line. So trust me with the process here, guys. Right, okay, so I'm just going to get rid of the overhang that I've got of that lining to match up with my main outer. Just be careful you don't want to cut any of the main outer pieces. If one part of the lining's baggy or big, the other side will be, like I've just had here. Okay. Okay, so we are moving on to step, images 59, 60, 61, 62, and 63. So, okay, so first of all, we're going to get the zip gusset. And remember, we've got this part here where we've got the cutout, that matches up to this part here. So, and that will fit your base. Okay, and the same with this part here as well. So before we go to the sewing machine, you want to catch all the layers of the lining, the gussets, the base, just everything basically. Okay, so we are going to sew just between that base, that cutout and that cutout, and we're going to reverse our stitch at the start and at the end. We're going to do 3/8 of an inch away from the edge on both sides and reverse our stitch at the start and at the end. Standard stitch length as well, guys. Same with the other side. just need to check the next bit. um, okay. Okay, so this bit here should open as like a box corner. Now, personally, I don't mention this in the actual pattern, but I did find on my, not my mock-up, but the one that is on the pattern cover, this one here, snipping at a certain point will help. Okay, so you've got your two body curve pieces here. So where that base edge touches, just give it a snip by just under 3/8 of an inch. So my base catches there, and I'm just going to snip that, and I'm going to do that for all four edges. Okay. And you're going to find that a lot easier, by the way, because it just means that that's going to fold round. Okay. Okay, so we're going to first of all clip the one side. I'm going to leave this side open. Personally, I do a couple of clips on this side first, flip it over and sort out this side. Now this is coming to the most trickiest part of the pattern. Once you've conquered this bit, you're laughing. Right, okay, so just going to go up one more. Okay, so we're going to just get the snips, open up this a bit now. And we're just going to snip within the seam allowance on the gusset. I'm doing every half inch. I'm probably just snipping 1/8, but I can go in further if I want to. All depends if I need to. Okay. I'm just going to match up this edge now and clip all the way around. Now personally, I'm going to go in with more clips because I'm finding when I get to the sewing machine this will want to move, so I'm just going to add more clips. Okay, open up your zip. First of all, before we go to the sewing machine, make sure your rectangle rings are pointing down or you've got some tape on there, Or if you've got these rectangle rings, you can take them off if you want to. I'm just fine with as they are. Right, so when we're at the sewing machine, we're going to do this in 2 halves per side. So, starting off at the top of the curve, we're going to sew 3/8 of an inch, reverse your stitch at start and at the end, all the way down here to here. Now you will find that you're going to have to roll it underneath your foot so you can just get down. You'll see me do that on the camera here. And then the next one, we're going to start from here, roll it, reverse a stitch, and then go all the way around to finish on this side. Don't try and do it in one go because I can guarantee you you'll lose your temper. How do I know? Because I've already tried it. So let's go to the sewing machine. Standard stitch length. Starting off on that centre, so I'm going to take a couple of those clips out at the top. 3/8 of an inch. You'll be able to kind of feel where the piping cord is. But just remember we've done that stitch, row of stitches, because we can unpick if we need to. Okay, so first your stitch at start, take it nice and slowly. I'm just going to reverse over that part there. That's where the join is of the side gusset to the zipper gusset. As you can see, I'm rolling it a bit and then reversing my stitch. You're going to need to roll it a little bit just so you've gone over that corner. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my overhead camera and just double check to see I haven't gone over that piping, which I think I have in some certain areas. Yeah. So as you can see, I've gone right over that piping. My sewing machine is very strong. So I'm going to have to do some unpicking. So I can see where that piping line stitching is because I've done a longer stitch length. So where I've done a shorter stitch length, I know that's my stitches that I've just done. So I'll meet you back in about 5 minutes. Okay, so I've gone ahead and unpicked that, and I'm going to resew it again. You will find that you probably have to do it once or twice in certain sections. That's adamant. It's no biggie. Right, okay, so just reverse stitch at the start and at the end. Hold your breath and hope for the best. Yes, I'm happy with that now. Okay. Right, okay, so we're going to do this side now as well. So I'm just going to move my clips and I'm going to point to you what I've just figured out. So if I move my clips to where the stitch line is, that means when I'm sewing, I can use my edge of my clips as a guideline. So when I'm sewing here, I know my needle's got to go in line with those clips. So we're going to start off on this side here, off at an angle on the base. Oh, wrong camera, sorry guys. Or you can do it this way if you want to. I'm going to try this way, see what happens. See how far I can get doing it this way, because I've never actually tried it this way. So let's try it this way. Let me try it out for you guys and see what happens. And then if it doesn't go to plan, then you guys know not to do it this way. I might struggle with this part here, so I'm going to have to reverse my stitch and go from the other side. That was actually a lot easier, just doing that last bit. Okay, so just double check to make sure you haven't caught the piping, which I haven't. We're going to repeat the same process for this one. Match up the top and the sides, clip as much as you can around the gusset, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so I've clipped that gusset into place, and I did exactly the same trick as what I did last time. So clipped it all into place and then readjusted all my clips. So the edge of the clips match up where I've sewed on the body lining piece, where I know where the piping is. Okay, so starting off like last time, you're going to have to crush this a little bit. Just bear in mind, starting off from the centre, all the way around and reverse your stitch. And then you probably won't get it under your sewing machine that well, but go as far as you can on the other side. And then we will finish off by just going over that last bit. Okay, so for some reason the camera actually turned off, and I didn't get myself sewing that part there. I didn't have any problems this time round. So basically start off with the centre, sew around this edge here, reverse your stitch, flip it over. You can sew from this side if you want to, or you can like do what I did, started off at that end, reversed my stitch and went to the centre there. So the next bit you're going to do is grab your iron and your ironing board and your bias binding. Excuse me. So your bias binding should be double folded, and we're going to work on the wrong side. We're going to fold this once again, and then we're going to press this in half. There's a method in my madness. I personally don't want to sew around this twice again. If I can only have to sew around it once more, I'm happy. So I'm going to go ahead and press all my bows binding in half, so it's half the width. Okay, so I've gone ahead and folded that in half and given it a really good press. So that's my raw side, that's my wrong side, this is my right side. Okay, so the trick is, because we've gone ahead and done that, we can just fold it over like so and clip all the way around the bag. And I'm not including the base edge as well. So I'll do round this part here and round the base, and then I'll meet you back. What I'm technically doing is making sure that this doesn't overlap too much of where the piping cord is. This is why I was saying, if you're a beginner and you want to make this bag, don't be scared, because it is doable. Don't use faux leather or any heavy materials. Use all cotton fabrics and don't do the piping to start off with, guys. Um, Once you've got the hang of everything, then go ahead, do the piping, and then make a third one where you can add the faux leather. But don't ever be scared to make these type of bags. My very first bag was a roller bag, actually. Yes, there was a lot of mistakes on it, but I haven't even got perfection on this, so don't stress. Now, so what I've done here is I'm working on this part, not this part here. So I've opened up the binding at the moment, lined it up with the base, and it's starting to like corner off. As you probably see, it's gone to like a 45-degree angle at the top. You're just going to nip that down, so it's like a mitered corner, and it will happen on this one as well. So let's just add a clip in that centre bit there. And I'm just going to ignore that bit there. And I'm just going to pinch that section on the other curve. And then we're just going to miter this corner and fold it into place. Okay, so I'm going to do the whole of the bag off camera and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so I'll come to the end. So I'm just going to make sure it's about an inch overhang. And clip that. Fold it within itself and just close that off like so. Okay, so this is the trickiest part. We're going to sew this in one go. Now you might need to stop and start on the base part. I have to, I'm not going to lie, it is a bit of a nightmare, that little bit. Right, okay, so you're sewing 1/8 of an inch away from where the fold is. So that just means we're sewing 1/8 of an inch away. Reason being is we won't touch the piping where it's sewed onto the main body, and it just means that you won't have to unpick it or anything like that. So let me just go to the camera for the sewing machine. I'm going to have my stitch length at a stitch length 3 because it's a little bit stressy and And the sooner I can get over this part, then that's the best bit. Right, so I've got a tailor's awl, just hold things into place. Reverse your stitch, and I'm hoping I've got enough thread in this bobbin to get me all the way around. Just get rid of some of these clips before I go any further. My binding's just folded up a little bit there. Right, so my needle's down, but I'm going to lift up my presser foot. Oops. Yes, your bag is going to get scrunched up, guys. Can't be helped on that bit. Not at the moment. You can hand sew that part if you want to. I'm just putting that out there now. Come on, I've only got one more side, one more bit to do. So I'm in line with halfway. Well, just gone past halfway, so we can do this. No, we can't. I just had a vision my camera wasn't on then, but it is. Right, press the foot up. Oops, losing my clips here. Do not sew over that. So that's all done. I've just got one bit that isn't caught here and one bit that isn't caught on this side. So I'm just going to go back to my sewing machine and catch those. Let me just do this one. I'm just going to put it under like this, if I can. It's only like inch and a half, if that. And this side as well, same with this. Exactly near enough, exactly same area, but on the opposite side. Okay, so that's all caught. We're going to turn this right side facing out, just get rid of any thread pieces. And your binding doesn't have to be the best, the bee's knees or anything like that. Reason being is no one's going to see it. As long as it's covered up with the seams, then that's the main part. Right, so you're going to take your time doing this next part. Get it nice and smoothed out. Bit in. Let's get poker stick. So just get the pokey stick in a bit. And repeat the same on this side. I'm just running the pokey stick on either side of the binding, just so we can get a neater finish. I'm doing that on both sides. I will stuff this out before we go any further, because stuffing out the bag will show any imperfections that you might need to turn inside out and redo. Let's just get rid of that. Right, okay, I'll be back once I've stuffed it out. Okay, so I've stuffed it out. I always tend to do that when it's quite a heavy construction bag. You will, best option is get a hairdryer on it to help you push it out. That did hurt my arthritis in this hand, so please just use a hairdryer, warm it up, then turn it in the right way, facing out. Okay, so we're just going to pop this to one side. We're going to work on the handles. I'm not kidding, guys. We're getting close to the end. Right, okay, so I've got the handles. Okay, so we're going to measure 2 inches in from the long edge. And we're going to draw a line in the centre. You can do that for both handles. Remember, yours might have all the way interfacing the full width. Mine hasn't because this cork fabric is quite thick, so I'm just taking a little bit of stress from me doing it this way. Okay, so quarters tape. Okay, so either side of that line, we're going to run quarters tape on both sides. Might need some more, grab another roll of quarters tape. Okay, and we're going to peel off the back and take off one first. Okay, and then we're just going to bring this long edge into the wrong side and next to that line. Now, if you find that it wants to come apart, grab some clips. Flip it around and do the other side. My interfacing has come off, so it definitely will need to pop some clips on this side. Put some broken clips on. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that, and we're going to basically, the ends we're not going to have raw. So I'm going to flip this over, so it's right side facing up. We're just going to fold it, so the two folds join together. I'm just going to pop a clip on this end here, and the same on this one here. So you will have your centre line just on the top there, the centre drawn line on top. You're going to sew 1/4 of an inch across on both of the two shorter ends, reverse your stitch at the start and at the end, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so now we've done 1/4 inch. I use the stitch length number 2.5 standard stitch length. We're going to trim this back to about 1/8 inch away from that sewn line. Okay, and then just move some of those clips down. While it's still folded, you're going to get your finger and thumb, and you're going to poke that out. Get a poker stick if you need to. Poke that out. So you've got a nice finished edge there. You can do that for both edges. So we've got a nice edge there. And then we're just going to grab the clips and bring the two folds together, like so. So it's basically one strap. Okay, and then we're just going to sew down this edge here first, 1/8 inch away, using the top stitch between a 3.5 to 4, depending on your fabric. I'll be using a 4, and then we're going to top stitch down the folded edge and reverse the stitch at the start and at the end. So stitch length number 4 for me. Might be a bit different for you guys, depending on what fabric you've used. 1/8 inch away. Okay, so you've got your first handle complete. Just trim off any loose pieces of thread. Okay, so we are on this section here. The images starting from 67 down to 73. And those are steps, well, 51. Right, okay, so we're going to do the next few steps. So grab your bag, put your rectangle rings back on if you've taken them off. You're going to grab your handle and we're going to pop the handle on. So I'm going to feed it on. Get rid of that thread there. Just feed it on. Doesn't matter how you feed it on at the moment, as long as you go under, like I have here, and you've got a U shape that isn't twisted. Okay, so the theory is, and this can vary depending on you. I'm doing 1.5 inches. So from this fold here to this edge here, we need 1.5 inches. But whatever measurement you choose, that's the measurement you use on when you're putting both handles on both rectangle rings on each side. So, okay, so with this one, same measurement. Just make sure that's definitely 1.5. Yep. Oh, a bit too much. Okay, so you're going to sew about 1.25 inches away from this folded edge here on both of those. I'm going to use a stitch length 4.5 on this because mine's so thick now, but if you're not got the thick fabric, go for a stitch length 3 or 4. So take your time. That's number 1 done. Yep. And the next one. If you've got a rivet machine, you can go ahead and put a rivet in if you want to, but don't always rely upon a rivet to hold the strength of a handle. Okay, so I've got that into place. Just gonna trim off any thread. Now, if you are putting a rivet, I still personally, would sew also into place. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process for this side, and I'll meet you back for the needles on. Just make sure they're perfect and they're at the right height as well, so there's not one taller than the other. So we're just going to put this to one side. We're going to make the strap, crossbody strap, and then the bag will be done. And if you've got the Easter package, the Easter advent calendar, stay tuned at the end. There is something small extra for you guys. Right, okay, so got your webbing. You can make your own strap out of fabric if you want to. There is a YouTube video that I've got on how to make a strap. So you're going to get your body, your slider, adjustable slider, and you're going to feed this over the centre part. Roll that under and clip that into place. You're going to go to your sewing machine and sew. Now, I'm personally not going to sew because I haven't got any pink thread, and personally I will want to use pink thread on this. So I'm just going to show you the bits that you need to sew. So you're going to sew across that bit there. I'm going to leave my clip in here. Then you're going to go to the other end of your strap and feed your lobster clasp on. Okay, and then you're going to get this part. You're going to go through the slider. So before you go any further, you want to make sure your lobster clasp is on the fold and not in the inside. You want it on the outside. Then you're going to feed this part through there. And the trick is you don't want any basically any twists. And then you're going to get your lobster clasp, and on the outside, so you want the clasp on the outside, feed that on, fold that over again, and then you're going to clip that into place and sew across there a few times. Then technically you have got an adjustable strap. Obviously mine isn't finished because it's not sewn, but I will show you a finished one that I did on the actual bag itself on the pattern. So that's that one. So here's one I made earlier, like Blue Peter style. Let's just make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's what it is. Obviously I've used pink thread on this. I used my last of my pink thread on this. So that's your adjustable strap. I'll click that onto place. Actually, I can't click it onto place because I'll tell you why. My glue hasn't properly set yet because I glued them and didn't leave them for 24 hours, for a couple of hours. So I would clip this to there. I'm just going to go to the front view camera so you guys can see the finished results. Right, so that's done. So if you're on general public and you've got the pattern, that's the bag done. It's a hard bag. I'm not going to lie, it does have stress points, but if you're a beginner, do as I said. Don't use faux leather or cork fabric to start off with. Go straight in with your cotton fabrics, have a play, and then add the piping in on your second bag and on your third bag. Go ahead, use these materials. So as you can see, I've got two here, 1 and 2. So if you are a Easter Advent Calendar member, you will have some extra hardware. So I'm going to jump to the overhead camera and show you how to make one of these little nifty little tassels. Okay, so you're going to need some either cork or faux leather for this tassel. You can't use cotton fabric. Mine's a bit curly, so let me just get this back into some form of shape. Okay, so you would have had some Chicago screws that have got like a heart and a screw. Let me just focus that. Reach, Becky. Okay, so you would have had a heart and a screw. You would have had a few of those. You would have had a heart ring, which is a solid heart ring, which has not got like any form of way of attaching. And the only way you attach it is with this small snap O ring. So let me just get the. You've got a few of these left over to make some more tassels, and or to do other stuff with. So keep those safe. You will need a few more tools, so you'll need a hole punching tool, rotary cutter, marking tool, some glue, and you will need some super glue as well. And what is this called? It's been a long day. Can you tell? You will need a quilter's rule. Right, okay. Just gonna put those in there so I don't lose them. Right, okay, so I've cut myself a piece that is 5 inches long by 4 1/4 high. So on the wrong side, on whichever side you want, you're going to measure in 1/2 inch to start off with. Don't need to go all the way down. So this marking tool. Let me just see what size this bit is on that. So I'm working on the 4 1/4 inch high. This is 4 1/4 inch high, this part is. So I'm just going to go halfway down, like so. Don't need to go all the way down to the bottom. Let me just zoom in for you. There you go, so you can see. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is on this edge here, going to measure down 1.5 inches. And I've started my line from that drawn line there. Okay, then from, oh, I didn't need to close that. From that line there, we're going to measure down 1/2 inch. If your Chicago screw is bigger, this one is very tiny. So this is like a quarter, it's 3/8 of an inch one. You want to make sure that you've got a bit of allowance on top and the bottom on that line of where your Chicago screw will be. Okay, so we're going to trim off this part here, but we're not going to trim off this bit here. That's redundant. You can probably use that for something else, but it's redundant for this anyway. The next thing you're going to do is just extend that bottom line there. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is trim this, and you're going to do your fringes. So you're not going to cut past that drawn line. I averagely just eyeball this, but you don't want them too big, but you don't want them too small. So no smaller than 1/8, but no bigger than 1/4 of an inch. You're going to do that for the whole row. Okay, just make sure they're all cut, like I've missed a bit there, so. Before we go any further. Okay. You're going to get your heart ring or whatever ring you're using. You're just going to feed that on. Okay. With leather work, sometimes people staple that part, but because we've got a Chicago screw going through that, you don't want to staple that part. So we're going to use some glue. And we're sticking that down to where that drawn line is. Okay. Then you're going to go along and put some glue in that top area. Now personally, I don't glue past about 3/8 of an inch away from that edge there. And there's a reason for that, because we need to move over to the super glue. Okay, and you're just going to fold this without getting your fingers too gummed up as you go. Okay, so just going to get some super glue and pop some there, and you've got to be really quick. Don't get it on your fingers, guys. And hold that into position. You can get super glue that's like a gel. Now, I think it's Gorilla Glue does that. You're just going to hold that into position. You can pop a clip on it if you want to. Just bear in mind if you've got quite a large excess of glue, you need to just make sure it's not on your clip, or else you're never going to get that undone. And as you can see, mine's gone really like Christmas tree, unlike the other one that I made. But you can get past this if you wanted to. You can just have to get your pair of scissors and curl it, or you can keep it like this. I think it's because this is the last piece of this blue cork that I've got. Right, so that's into position. Now, I personally would still go ahead and do the Chicago screw on this, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm going to do it. So, right in the center, personally, I just do some indents to make sure I'm happy with how that is and what position that is. And then I just punch a hole all the way through. Okay, so you're going to get your screw of your Chicago screw. I'm going to pop that through there. And you're going to get your heart of your top, or your top of your Chicago screw. Twist that on a little bit. Oh, I might go from this side actually. And make sure that's nice and tight. If you've got a shape, it might want to twist around, and it won't be the right way. So just twist around your screw, as long as you're not undoing it. Okay, and then you're going to get your snap ring, snap that on. It's always better the one way, so let me just work out which way that is. No, it wasn't. I was the right way before. Okay. And then you're going to get your bag, your finished bag, and clip it into place. So I'm going to twist that heart back around, and there you go. There's your finished result. Now go to the front view camera. No, wrong camera. Right, okay, so that is your finished bag. Obviously, you can get the tassel to lie flat. Mine's a bit twisted round at the moment, so I might have to re-clip it back onto place. So let me just do that. And the reason being is I can see the screw on the front of the bag rather than the heart of the bag, the heart being on the front. So let's go on from this side. And there you go. The heart is now on the front. It should be anyway. But that's the end of the tutorial for today. Obviously you'll have a finished bowler bag with a crossbody strap. I want to say personal thanks to everybody that brought the Easter calendar, and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you're wanting the Christmas Advent calendar, please sign up to the newsletter, and we are to open it up to the general public this year. I can't believe I'm already talking about Christmas, guys, but we have already started designing the stuff that goes in the calendar. 24 days of sewing is generally 3 projects, 2 minor projects, really small projects, and then 1 large project. So please do sign up. It's around about £60, £70. I think it's going to have to go up because of the tariffs that have now been brought in by America, unfortunately. Um, so it might have to go up. I think it's about £10 more. We were doing the maths last night, but we'll see. And the postage as well. So yeah, that's for mainland UK only. If you're a general public person that wants to be signed up for the advent calendar, please go to the description and click on the link to sign up for one of the advent calendars. If you want to join Fred's Gang is a monthly subscription paid online sewing school. We make bags, quilts, sewn products, and we have a really fun time. And you can download all the past patterns. I think there is about 45 downloadables in the group, and there is just over 100 sew-alongs that you can watch. So yeah, if you want to join, go to the website, have a read on the Fred's Gang information, and that's FRED S Gang, Fred's Gang, and basically have a look and then sign up. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.